Welcome to my world. I'm Jas Takhar, and I want you to come follow me on my journey as I document the ups and downs of running a business. I've been in sales and service for over 25 years. See, my cup's full now. It's my time to give back to you. The conversations I'm having with guys and gals in the industries of real estate, entrepreneurship, and leadership. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and all you have to do now is sit back, relax, and come into my world.
Hey, it's the Jas Takhar podcast with your host, Jas Takhar, and your girl, Laura Stewart. How you doing today, Laura?
Hey, I'm good. Same old, same old.
Same old. We're still in lockdown here in Toronto, Canada. Hence why you see the Zoom. Hence why you also see another beautiful, beautiful face. It is Heather Monahan. How are you doing today, Heather?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for doing this with us. I think we could take a half an hour just going through your bio. So I'll be really quick, and then you feel free to add anything if I did miss it. But best-selling author of Confidence Creator and Boss in Heels, TED speaker. If you guys haven't checked out her talk on TED, make sure you go YouTube that. Top 100 business podcasts, Creating Confidence. Very easy to get to. iTunes, Spotify, and all the podcast platforms. Check out the descriptions below. You'll get all the links to her podcast, and an executive coach. And I'm sure I missed out on other things. But Heather, talk to us a little bit about creating confidence. Where did your confidence come from, for starters?
Okay, so the only thing you left out was the last 20 years of my career, which was in sales and sales leadership in corporate America. I was a chief revenue officer, responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars a year and thousands of employees. And 3 years ago, I was fired when the CEO I'd worked for 14 years became ill. He elevated his daughter to replace him, and she fired me immediately. And it's funny that you're not the only one. Everyone picks up at the 3 years ago and I'm 46, and I'm like, hang on, no. Yeah, last 3 years are great, but I actually had a really big career in corporate America before then.
Well, let's talk about that. You said you said sales, and what was the second part? Because I missed out on that.
My entire career was in sales and sales leadership. So either I was an equity partner running a company in my early 20s, or I was in corporate America as a VP of sales, EVP of sales, and then ultimately chief revenue officer.
Well, you're talking to somebody that's been in sales and service himself for 25 years. Laura's been in sales and is our director of sales and marketing for our actual real estate company, what we actually sell, for the last 5-6 years now, right, Laura?
Yeah, 6 years now.
And so a lot of our listeners are salespeople and business owners. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what do you think it takes to be like in the top 1% in sales? Obviously, something that you were in and are in still. Like, what does it take? What's your thoughts on that?
A willingness to move forward in uncertainty is, in my opinion, a fundamental for success in sales, or really in any business. The importance and need for innovation and facing risk and moving quickly through risk and taking chances, and a lot of that is also based in confidence and having confidence within yourself so that you can feel comfortable moving forward in uncertain times. But when you're someone who'd rather go big or go home, you're willing to move fast and break things and see fear as a green light that means go, not go home, you're going to find success.
Now, Heather, your first book was called Balancing in Heels, and obviously that's attributed to the fact that you were a woman and you were in the C-suite.
Wait, no, my first book is called Confidence Creator. It's right here.
Oh, it's not. My apologies. Boss in Heels. Is that the second book?
No, the second book I just finished. It's coming out in November 2021 with HarperCollins Leadership. The working title right now is called Leapfrogging Villains. But what you're referencing, Boss in Heels, is a hashtag that I used and launched when I was in corporate America.
Oh, gotcha. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So thank you for correcting me here, because I mean, as a woman in the sales and service industry myself, I find myself surrounded by a lot of men in high places making a lot of decisions. Talk to me about walking into some of those rooms where I'm sure you were the only woman in that space. Where did you pull that confidence from to speak up and to keep working it, to keep at it, to kind of move yourself along the corporate ladder?
Yeah, at first, I was not very confident. I just have always been a very hard worker and I was very competitive. So I relied on the strategy that I could just outwork everybody, which I did, but that's not a sustainable long-term strategy. So over time, I began investing in myself, creating confidence within myself. And when I went through that transition, I became a much more powerful version of myself. However, on the outside world, people who knew me when I was younger and wasn't confident didn't know it because I projected a certain level, I guess, of confidence that wasn't real. Now, however, like I would never have shown up to anything without makeup on and a baseball hat when I was in my 20s, because I was so afraid that if I showed any weakness or lack of perfection, or, I didn't look the most wonderful I could, that was somehow a reflection of what was within me. Now at 46, it's funny because I'll wear whatever I want wherever I go because people are paying me for my expertise and my knowledge, not for my outfit. And I'm so clear on that. My outside doesn't have anything to do with my inside. But it took me years to understand that. And what I want to share with any woman specifically that is in, a male dominated industry, and I'm sure, many of us have been in these environments where you are the only woman, instead of saying, oh, geez, do I warrant this spot? Let's lean into that spot and say, oh, hell yeah, I warrant this chair. And I'm going to raise my hand and contribute my unique perspective, which guaranteed will be different than everybody else there. That's why you got to be at that table and raise your hand and contribute so that more women can get invited to that table and instead see it as an opportunity for growth.
I love that. So if you had to go back and maybe change some things, you wouldn't call it hashtag boss and heels. You would just call yourself hashtag boss.
No, I love boss and heels. Let me tell you why. So, and people say to me, does that mean you wear heels every day? No, I have Converse All-Stars on right now. But what boss and heels stood for was that when I grew up, I saw white men in blue pantsuits as the quote unquote boss. And I couldn't be that because I wasn't a man. When I was coming up in corporate America and advancing, I was dressing a certain way. I was wearing blue pantsuits. I was putting my hair in a bun. I was taking all this outside advice from people, but I really didn't become the best version of myself as a leader until later in my career when I started showing up as the real me. Some days that's rocking, Louis Vuittons, and some days it's rocking cons. It doesn't matter. And the message that I wanted to instill on others, or the conversation I wanted to start, is whether you have purple hair, you wear sneakers, you wear flip-flops or ripped jeans, that's irrelevant. Just show up as the boss that you are, no matter how that looks. And for me, that's why I called it hashtag boss in heels, because when I was a kid, there weren't any bosses wearing heels.
Did you find as you got more comfortable in your own skin, so to speak, that you started to attract the right people and repel the wrong people, Heather? Like, I feel a lot of that once, like in the real estate industry, there's blue suits and ties and that's what people are used to seeing. And when they see someone like myself, I'm a t-shirt, sweater, hoodie, sometimes wearing guy, wave my hands a lot. I started to only get people coming into my office that were comfortable with me being that person. Did you find the same thing yourself as well?
Yeah. And, to that point, one of my problems for a long time, I was working in a toxic environment where someone was very threatened by me. But because I wasn't showing up as my most true self, because I was basically being a watered down version of myself, I was able to exist in that space. The minute I turned the volume up and went all in 100% Monahan, that's when I got fired. And that's the good news, right? You don't want to be in a room with people that don't actually want you there. And for a long time, I thought like, well, I'll smile bigger, I'll try harder, I'll win them over. No, your job in life is not to win people over. In fact, when you decide to show up as that real true version of you, whatever that may be or look like, or whoever that is, you will very quickly, it will become clear to you, oh, these are not my people. Wait a minute, I wasn't supposed to be sitting at this table ever. holy cow. And I call it firing your villains. When you get rid of those negative people in your life, the people that want to hold you back, suddenly you open up this space, which is what you just mentioned, so that new positive people who are attracted to you can start coming into that circle and start elevating you and cheering you on and being a part of your tribe.
Was it something that you felt in your gut, like when you said trying to win people over? Like there might be somebody right now that's listening to this podcast at work and looking around like, shit, I'm trying to kind of do that. Like I'm not myself. Like, is it like, fuck, you just kind of know, like, like I'm trying too hard. Like if you were to look back, is that kind of what was happening?
If I look back on my career in business, I 100% my entire career, I was trying to win people over instead of just being the operative word, instead of just showing up as myself. I thought, no one told me this. This is why I want people to know this. That's not your job. No one told me that. I thought it was my job. I thought this is sales and this, I can win anyone over. And I'm so grateful. This is my talent. But what I was wrong is that I was trying to get people to like me. I was people pleasing. I wasn't having boundaries. I wasn't respecting myself because I didn't even know who I really was because I was wearing the blue pantsuit for so long to make somebody else happy. And it didn't really change and become apparent to me until I started showing up as my most confident self that, wait a minute, that was time wasted.
So Heather, take us back. You had mentioned when we first started the podcast that you were fired essentially after 20 years of hard work and lots of effort. You were just let go just like that overnight by somebody who probably didn't deserve to be there over you. What did you do in the minutes, hours, days after that? Because a lot of people experience those hardships and it's not always easy to bounce back right away. Like, what was your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I grabbed a bottle of Chardonnay, not a glass. I grabbed a weighted blanket. I cried my eyes out. I mean, there were moments there I did not know. I'm a single mother. I didn't know what I was going to do. For so long, I had attached a sense of self-worth to my title and my paycheck. And I used to call it golden handcuffs, right? I'd say, oh, I can't leave. I have these golden handcuffs. And suddenly someone took the golden handcuffs off of me. And I felt this free falling. It was horrible. I swear to you, and people don't believe me, I did not know if I was going to be able to come back from that. However, I did something very smart within 24 hours while I was still on that couch crying. I decided, wait a minute, nobody's reaching out to me. I can't believe this. And then I noticed that new CEO didn't want anyone to know she had got rid of her chief revenue officer. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to post that I just got fired. And so many people called me and they said, you're crazy. That looks weak. That looks pathetic. That looks needy. But I listened to myself, my own intuition. I said, something inside me tells me, for me, this is the right thing. I'm going to go ahead and move forward with it. And that post went viral. And I had thousands of opportunities that came to me. And ultimately, Froggy from the Elvis Duran show, which is one of the largest US radio shows, tweeted at me, hey, Heather, any way I can help, I'm here for you. I tweeted back, get me on the show. He got me on the show. And while I was on that show is when Elvis said to me, well, obviously you're writing a book. I wasn't, but he gave me the confidence in that moment that I needed to write my first book, Confidence Creator, and I did.
How was that process? I mean, I'm in the process of writing a book as well. Laura's actually ghostwriting it for me. I have trouble writing emails.
That's not a very good ghost when you know who she is.
Yeah, I know that one. You know what? I'm gonna give the credit where it's due. I'm gonna give Laura. I always tell you I'm gonna give you the credit where it's due for sure. How was that process? Just getting like your thoughts on paper and reliving some of the stuff that you had to.
You know, growing up, I had been known as the social one, and my sister was the smart one, the literary one, right? And so when you allow yourself to be put in lanes for your whole life, to have this really bizarre idea that, wait a minute, I'm going to blow up that lane and I'm just going to take my unique talents wherever I want to go. And if today that means I'm writing a book, I'm going to go write a freaking book. It was scary, right? That was a really big risk, in my opinion, because my safety and comfort was in sales and leading sales teams, not in sitting down and writing something. I didn't even know if it was legal. I was like, do I need approval from someone, right? Is this okay? And so I Googled, how do you write a book? And it said, you have to be disciplined and write X amount of hours a day. And I said, I just got fired. Okay. So I did. And within the first week, it came to me that you know what, I felt like this before. I felt low and down and out. And I've learned to leverage these moments to put them to work for me, to allow me to leapfrog ahead. And that's when I figured out I was writing basically a compilation of my lowest moments in my life and how I leverage those moments to create confidence.
Now, Heather, you know, you're writing this book, you don't have a job. Obviously, you probably don't have any money coming in, and you had mentioned that you had all these opportunities. How did you pick the book path where you weren't sure of the money coming in versus all these other opportunities that were coming at you?
Yeah, it's funny. It's really no different than now I'm an entrepreneur and I get a lot of opportunities and I have to decide quickly, is this worth my time and, you know, my energy, and should I lean into this partnership or concept or idea or business or whatever? You know, the more you listen to yourself and just tune out the noise around you, stop asking everybody else, what do you think? Should I write a book? Because I'll tell you, had I done that, people would have been like, no, there's 9 million books out there. Don't write a book. Today, 2 years after that, I'm so grateful. I'm so proud of that book. That represents so much to me about living lanelessly, about not listening to other people, about stepping into fear. I love that book. So I learned through this whole process to stop looking to everyone else for validation and instead just validate myself.
Yeah, we talk a lot about shutting out the external noise, especially right now during the lockdown. There's obviously daily and minute by minute reports on what's happening with cases and deaths and hospitalization rates, all very scary stuff. But I feel like a lot more people should go on news diets, and for me, that's kind of the one hack that I'm mentioning to people. Like, look, I know it might be tough to shut out the noise of your best friend, your business partner, your life partner, your parents, your brothers, your sisters. But wow, can we all just turn off the news, or maybe not watch 6 hours of it consistently? What's a couple of hacks for you? Like, if you can kind of go back and I'm sure you even use them now, like to help you shut out that external noise, Heather.
Journaling has been huge for me. It's really helped me to listen to and acknowledge my own voice, which I didn't, because it's a safe place, right? Like no one else is going to read that journal other than you. So you write what you're truly thinking. The more I would go back and reflect in my journal, the more I would say, oh, I knew I should have done this months ago. I got to start listening to myself. I was right, and you start seeing this pattern that, wow, if this whole time, my whole life, I'd listened to myself, I would have made better decisions that I was meant for versus forcing my way into things that, really aren't meant for me. So that's definitely one of my biggest hacks. Meditating, so hard for me. And sometimes I meditate if I'm just working out. But anytime, like for people will say, when are you your most creative? Maybe you're drawing. For me, it's when I'm running. For others, it's sitting on a couch meditating. Figure out what that space looks like for you and then find a way to get there every day. Find a way, because when you do, I go for a run, I'm like, oh, this all just can't, I figured it out. I just put the dots together. I wasn't seeing it before because I'm having a hard time breathing. So I've stopped thinking and it comes to me, so figure out what that space is for you.
I'm going to take this down to the micro a little bit. It sounds like you're juggling a lot of balls. I mean, and doing a lot of things. And I feel myself always involved in a lot of different projects and working out and meditating and journaling, and your mother. It's like, how do you do it all? What is the way you organize your time, or what is your overall macro thesis of getting it all done?
I can tell that you don't have kids because of the way you just said that. That's so funny.
I have a fur baby.
Okay, doesn't count. So you can put it in a cage and leave the house. So yeah. We can't do that yet with kids. So here's the thing, that sounds really scientific. It's not. It's not scientific. So to me, listen, when you have a child, you have someone depending on you for life, that is a freaking priority, right? Like you have to figure out ways to set them up for success, have a routine. He's here on Zoom school now because of the pandemic. It's hard, right? I'm not used to being the Zoom school lunch lady, and I'm on and I'm like in between meetings and I'm running in here and it's challenging. I don't want to sugarcoat this. This has not been on any parent that's been working from home with a child at home. Your workload more than doubled and it's really intense. Now, he reminds me a lot. He says, we're not the only ones going through this. It's not going to last forever, you know? So he's figured out, oh, mom's looking a little stressed. I got to come and give her a little bit of support. And so I remind myself that too. Hang on, this too shall pass. This is temporary. The more I look at it as a window in time instead of my life, the easier it is for me to say, okay, get it back together. But you know, here's the thing, you need to prioritize, and that priorities can change weekly, sometimes daily. I mean, hopefully not too often daily, but I wake up every day with a plan for my week and a plan for my day. And I revisit the entire thing, you know, each day, each week, because there are some things to say, oh, shoot, my son's brace broke and we need to get to the doctor to fix that. Suddenly that jumped up to top priority this morning, right? But I didn't know that was going to happen yesterday. So I'm constantly just reevaluating and keeping clarity of information and scheduling ahead of me. And sometimes I have to cancel on people. I was late today to this meeting. You know, sometimes there's things that happen and you just try to ebb and flow and adjust, but there is no science to any of it.
Well,
Heather, are you a big goal setter? Like, do you set like 5-year goals, 10-year goals, 1-year goal? What's your strategy on that?
So in the past, I used to be big into that, right? When I was in corporate America, I was at chief revenue officer level. My next move was CEO. I didn't know if it would be at the company I was at or if I'd be moving to another company, but I knew within 2 years, like I had that nailed down. Flip to now, and it's very different. One, now that we have the pandemic, I think it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to project out 5 years because we don't know what's happening to the economy. We don't know what's happening with the health crisis. There's so much we don't know. And every domino that falls completely impacts industries and people and money, right? And those things will impact you and your business. So this is the best that I can say to people from my 5-year goals now. I say I will be running a very large company that at its core is about empowering others, being the most true and real version of myself, and delivering value while bringing a lot of value into my home for me and my son. Does that mean I'm going to have a movie about my first book? Maybe. Does that mean I'm going to have a skincare line? Could be. I don't know, right? I know that there's so much potential under that umbrella. What's important is I stay true to who I am and I keep innovating and bringing new solutions to market that solve problems for people and deliver value back to my bank account.
In terms of the value that you're talking about, I mean, you're just a beast, a super beast on LinkedIn and all the content that you put out there. When did that start coming into your world? Like you just started speaking to the world through writing? Like I see your LinkedIn captions and posts are so long, very valuable. Anybody who's watching or listening right now, make sure to follow Heather on LinkedIn and all the other socials. But what has content production and producing content done for you and your business, your life?
Yeah, so that's funny. I really got active on LinkedIn 1 year before I was fired, right? It's when I launched my personal brand. I started investing in myself, like doing a photo shoot, like having a graphic artist work with me on branding elements for a logo. I put money into me and I had never done that. And it was scary. And I thought, I don't even know what I'm doing, but I feel like it seems like the right thing. Fast forward to when I got fired, wrote the book, etc., I had those cuffs were off and I could start posting about whatever I wanted. So my social started picking up a little bit more engagement. The more real I was, the more I would tell my real stories, the more my engagement and audience would grow. Then last year, November 2019, I went on Gary Vaynerchuk's audio experience, his podcast. And when we were wrapping up the show, he said, I want to help you with something, but you need to promise me you're going to do it. And I said, all right, tell me. He said, Heather, you have such potential, but you're not maximizing it on LinkedIn. And he said, I want you to go all in on LinkedIn. I said, well, what does all in mean? He said, currently you post 1 time a day. You need to post at minimum 5 to 10 times a day. And I said, okay, that's just more work. I can get it done. I promise you I'll do it. So now I use this software called Shield to give me data analytics on my LinkedIn profile. My profile views went from 4 million in 2019, and I just looked yesterday, it's at 15 million for YTD. So what he did was he truly blew up my social media specific to LinkedIn by giving me that one single tip.
Well, congratulations on that. I mean, that definitely sounds like Gary. I actually heard you on his podcast, so it's funny, like the connection. I had an opportunity to have him on this podcast as well. what has he kind of meant to you? Like, I'm sure you've been a follower of Gary's for a while, like him just mentoring you from afar, giving you that hack. But what are some things, maybe one or two other things that you've heard that you've learned from Gary that maybe someone hasn't even read into his content yet?
You know, well, one of the things that I found interesting is he talks a lot about the importance of enjoying the journey. And that really pissed me off because when you're new at anything, you're not enjoying it. That's BS, right? But in the moment, in the conversation, I wasn't wrapping my head around it. I really reflected on it after leaving him. And here's how I figured it out for myself. When I was coming up in sales as an account executive, right, and I didn't have a lot of money, and the struggle was real, and my closing ratio wasn't where it needed to be, and I didn't know the hacks or the techniques, and I didn't have the experience, I didn't enjoy the journey. However, I remember when I hit executive vice president and I was making good money and I had a lot of expertise and I knew what I was doing with my eyes closed. And at that point in my career, I really started enjoying I was like, oh, I got this and I know what's about to happen next and I know who to call for this. Once you've made it, like you hit a tipping point in whatever your industry or expertise is or work that you do. And that's when you really can step back and say, oh, you know what, this is fun. And I can't wait to see what happens next. Now, fast forward to 3 years ago, I get fired. That was not fun. I didn't know how I was going to make money. I wasn't an expert in writing books or podcasting or any of this stuff. I had to move forward with faith that somehow I was going to figure it out. And that was so scary. So when he would say to me, but make sure you enjoy the journey, I wanted to flip him off. Cut to now, I realize I'm just not at that tipping point yet. I know it's out there, but I haven't reached it yet.
Any big differences you've seen with yourself between working for a company versus working for yourself that you wanted to share with people?
I mean, I definitely am way more myself now, where I always felt that I was being judged, or behind closed doors, someone was saying she could have done that better, or gosh, she's, a variable and we don't know what there was always this, didn't like something about me, too loud, too much this, whatever. And I don't like that feeling of being judged. And this is another Gary thing. If you don't put so much value on the compliments, you don't need to put so much value on the negative response either, which I thought that was helpful. And I happen to be like a type A overachiever. I love winning things. I love positive feedback. So for me, I've always valued those positives. And I'm trying to now, and it's gotten a lot better. And this has been part of the working for myself thing. I evaluate myself daily. I speak to myself in the most loving and kind way. I'm so freaking proud of myself for what I've built in the past couple of years. So I'm the best boss I've ever had. Fact, like hands down. And so working for me is amazing, and it's allowing me to show up as this more real, true version of myself. Doesn't mean I don't make mistakes every day. Oh my gosh, I have failed so many times. My Perry Ellis, we partnered, that fell apart. I went to HSN with this concept, that fell apart. A skin line fell apart. I've had so many failures. However, I found this certainty within me that failure will take me forward to something else, or it was just a pivot, and we'll bounce back from it.
Yeah, I can just feel it. Just the first time that you and I have met, you can just tell that there's like this huge weight that's kind of been lifted off of your shoulders because you're allowed to now show the world your uniqueness. It shoots right through the screen. I hope the viewers and I know
it shoots right through Zoom.
It's right through the screen for sure. It does. You spoke a little bit about like how like that you're your own, like the best boss that you've ever had. What about the words that you say to yourself on a daily basis? I'm sure that shifted, like from someone that was maybe using a lot of negative words to yourself. Do you find that you're starting to use a lot more positive words?
That was one of my strategies when I first got fired. I had to be very mindful of, okay, we've got to rewrite this dialogue right now because I was so negative and so fearful and so down. So my first thing was talk to myself the same way I would talk to my son. If my son just got fired from his team, would I yell at him and say, I can't freaking believe you blew it? No, I would say, sweetheart, I'm giving you such perspective right now. This is one teensy tiny little thing in this amazing thing called your life. And you're going to see how it's going to take us to a better place. Right. So it was like me training myself to reevaluate how I had been handling it and how I was choosing to now. I used to have, I am affirmations, I am confident, I am creative, I am enough, that I would do all the time. Now, here we are 3 years later. I don't have to write those down anymore because I'm in this environment 99% of the time. Everyone really, you know, for the more you work for yourself and like create it, it becomes second nature. Of course, I still have bad days and I have to be like, oh, we got to go back to the plan. Like, let's pull that out and take a look at it again. I'm having a tough day. But most of the time, that stuff is just running now. Like, you got this. No, you know, okay, it's scary for a second. Fear is a green light that means go. Like, just keep, like, you start training yourself enough that it becomes second nature.
Heather, do you have staff working for you?
Do I have what?
Staff.
So it's not like I have a team of people here. You know, I have people that run my social media. I have people that run my podcast. I have people that edit my podcast. I have people that sell my podcast. I have people that are out selling my speaking engagements. But it's not like I have this full-time team that just is Team Heather and like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I work with people in more of a contract basis.
And sorry, the reason I asked is because you said I'm the best boss I ever had. So I was just curious as to, you know, what makes you so different than your bosses were to you?
So, I mean, I've had a lot of different bosses throughout my career, but I guess the one that ended up firing me was very much micromanager, did not trust others, wasn't big into elevating or investing in employees, where that completely goes against every grain of who I am. I don't want to micromanage people. If I have to micromanage you, I'm going to fire you because you shouldn't be on my team, right? Like, I don't have time for that. I need people that I can trust. I want people to intimidate me with their innovation and risk taking and knowledge, because the more we surround ourselves with great people, the greater we become, right? Like, I need to be challenged. I want people pushing me to push that envelope and go bigger and get better. So I just, from seeing it done the wrong way in corporate America, I have been able to do it what I think it's the right way for me anyway.
Yeah, it makes you happy. I get that. Like, I mean, we talk a lot about here, myself and my business partner, that it truly is people over profit, right? I mean, that doesn't mean that we don't want the profit and we need the profit. We need the resources. But for us, if we had to make a decision over a little bit of extra profit or possibly letting somebody go, we're going to keep people here, because for us it is really about the people. I also want to go back to something that you mentioned just before Laura asked that question about having bad days. Like, I love that you mentioned that you still have bad days, and for anybody who's watching and listening, it's not about walking out in your backyard and saying, there's no weeds in my backyard. There's no weeds in my backyard. It's like, if there's fucking weeds in your backyard, there's weeds in your backyard. Like, it's not about just being fake and gullible and naive. It's understanding that, look, you can have bad days. Try not to stay in that rabbit hole of negativity, where in the past, maybe it was days you stayed in there and then hours. Try to shrink down the amount of time that you spent in that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I call those safety nets, right, that we can create for ourselves. So I was coaching. I just started doing executive coaching during the pandemic because I can't get out and do speaking engagements the way I used to. So I was on a coaching call with a client, and she's having this problem with, if she has to get on Zoom for whatever reason, she starts getting almost a panic attack. She's a lawyer, intelligent. She used to present fine in real life, but suddenly this change, pressure, whatever it is, it's crippling her in her business. So I the first thing, to your point, I said to her, I said, we need a safety net. Okay, so I always have lavender right next to my computer. If I get stressed out right before, like if drilling starts in my building and I'm like, oh my, I can't control this. Calm down, Heather, and you'll find a solution, right? So I always have little safety nets that I need. I said, what's a safety net that we could come up with that would make you feel safe on your Zoom calls so that you could have an out or buy yourself some time to think? And she said, I don't know. What could it be? I said, well, it could be something you could say. Like, you could say to the person, I didn't understand that question clearly. Could you go ahead and articulate that in another way? She said, ooh, I have a better one. I said, what is it? She said, I'm going to say this. Oh, you were frozen the last minute. Would you mind recapping what you said so that she could get herself 1 full minute and everyone will believe that you were frozen, right? So she created this safety net for herself. When she gets negative, gets in her head, she's got a lever to pull and get out of it.
We're laughing because Jas sometimes on phone calls will say, "I'm sorry, you just cut out there when he needs a moment." So
Yeah, just to kind of get back into you talk about the yellow lights, green lights, red lights. Can you expand a little bit on that? Because even like you mentioned it a couple of times here in the podcast, but you also talk a lot about it in your social media posts. Can you just talk a little bit about your thought process around the lights?
You know, it's so interesting. I never talk about any light except for a green light. However, I know why your thought process worked that way. I talk a lot about fire, your villains, and I know that you probably see red when you think of that. So
Yes.
the image, you visualize things, like I can tell just from
100%.
how you pick that up, right? That's so interesting. And that's great. I'm definitely the same kind of a person. So you know, for me as a child, I saw fear as something to be afraid of. Run, go home, lock yourself in your apartment, hide under your bed, and pray it passes, right? That's what I was taught. However, I never learned that once you were equipped as an adult to handle and manage things, that you didn't need to any longer see fear as a green light, that see fear as a red light, or you know, go home. Instead, if you chose to see it the complete opposite and see it as, this is my signal, I need to run right into it, that could actually help you achieve more success, you know, become more of who you are, become more confident. So I've learned this very late in life. I wish I had been taught this as a kid, because I can't even imagine what I'd be doing right now. But I'll tell you, I really have chosen to see fear as a green light, that anytime I feel it is a sign that means take action, go now, and step right into it. And the more I do that, the more success I have, the more confident I become, and the more I realize I'm on to this whole thing that I had been seeing the entirely wrong way my whole life.
So Heather, a lot of our guests that we've had on before, they'll talk about steps people can take in their lives to achieve success. And a lot of the responses we'll get from our viewers and listeners are, yeah, well, that's easy for that person to say because that person has money. And obviously from where you, like when you got fired, you were probably doing quite well and you kind of had to start over. Has your mentality around money and how you spend money changed from when you were younger to now when you're entrepreneur and you're doing it all on your own?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I spend so much less money because I am not where I used to be, and I burned through all of my savings. I was not someone who came into this world wealthy, right? That wasn't, and I get how your listeners feel that way. I freaking feel that way. I'm like, yeah, Gary, easy for you to say. You inherited your dad's company. Give me a break. So I'm right there with them. Like, I'm self-made. I made it more money when I was 25 years old than I ever have again in my whole life, which is embarrassing to say because I was an equity partner and I generated 30 million in a year for the company that I was a part of, and I had a very small equity piece. So I made a huge amount of money at a very young age. I lost it all in my divorce. I built it back up again in corporate America in my ascension to chief revenue officer. Then I lost it all becoming an entrepreneur and starting over from nothing with no money coming in and massive bills to pay, because you create a life, or at least I did, around a certain level of wealth that you know that you're going to have, AKA the golden handcuffs. Mm-hmm. And so I've been on that roller coaster of like, have nothing, have everything, have nothing, have everything, have nothing, you know. And here's the thing is that I've learned, as long as I always have faith that the one thing I can figure out is revenue. Like, that's my jam. I'll figure it out. Might take me a window, but I believe in just going all in. And if anyone thinks any of this has been easy for me, it has not. And money is definitely a super hard part of it. Everyone says, you know, act as if money wasn't a problem. What would you do? Oh, don't even say that to me, because let me tell you, my life would be so different. I'd be out vacationing, living my best life on a yacht outside in the ocean in Miami every day, right? But that's not where I am today. Doesn't mean I won't be there in the future. Heck yeah, of course I will be. But for right now, this is what we've got to do. And for anyone listening that thinks that this has been a layup or I have some unlimited bank account, that's not the case. And it's almost, I feel like in a weird way, that's the test, right? yes, I could have just hung it up and gone and taken another job in corporate America and like been a watered down version of myself. Or I could have said, hey, I'm going to roll the dice, and I don't know, the odds are not with me right now. And, there are challenges, but I'm going to invest in me. I'm going to go all in on me, even if it means taking the last freaking dime on my savings account. I'm going to find a way to make this work. And sometimes when you have that conviction, you have those needs, that helps accelerate you to push even further.
Well, I love that you embody that sign so well. And for our listeners right now, I'm just pointing to the ready, fire, aim. I mean, you've heard Heather mention it like 12 times already. Like she just went all in, all in, all in. I'm such a true believer that you have to, at some point, just put those chips in and kind of see where the plinko chip will fall. Heather, I want to be, and Laura and I both want to be very respectful of your time. I want to leave our listeners and our viewers with one tip. It could come from really any angle. I'll leave it to you. If there's one thing you want to leave our viewers and listeners with today, what would that be?
This is just so relevant because it's a conversation I had last night. A good friend of mine called me. People call me a lot asking for work advice. And she said, I found myself in a situation newly. I used to love my job. Suddenly, the expectations have changed. I have a new woman demanding all this stuff of me. It's not realistic. I can't breathe. I can't get the work done. I'm not sleeping. And I'm just so angry. And she kept going back to, I hate this lady. And I'm angry. And I said, all right, pump the brakes. Here's the thing, stop focusing so much on this person and on what they're doing, and start focusing on, how did I let this happen? People will treat you the way you teach them to. Now, I can tell you this, if I worked at that same company, that lady would not call me twice with her BS unrealistic expectations, because I would say to her, I'm confused. How do you think that's going to happen? Can you walk me through how this is going to happen? Like, I would push back in a respectful way to say that's not feasible. And if you think it is, I'd love for you to go out and run with it, and let's circle back so you can teach me what I'm missing, right? I would handle that situation differently. I would create boundaries for myself. I would respect myself. And so when I shared that with my friend on the phone, she didn't like it. She said, well, that's easy for you to say. I said, no, it's not easy. It's simple. It's not easy. But when you put yourself first, start respecting yourself, creating boundaries, you change the game. And it starts with taking action even when you feel uncomfortable. More importantly, when you do feel uncomfortable.
I love it. I thought that might have been Laura calling you about me, how much she hates working for me, but I'm shocked. I'm glad it wasn't. Heather, thank you so much for not only doing this episode with us, but putting out so much positivity, especially right now in today's time. We need it more and more. And so thank you for doing your part. It's really nice to watch, hear, listen to all the stuff, positivity that you put out. So thank you once again.
And Heather, I wanted to thank you as well. It's not always so easy us getting women of your caliber on our podcast, and to give us other ladies something to look up to. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. And I hope you guys stay safe. We will get through this hopefully sooner than later.
And if you do make a trip to Toronto, please, not that you need it, but we would love to take you around this beautiful city. We'll actually take it as an insult if you don't have at least a drink with us. We will get a bottle of Chardonnay. We'll see how deep we get into it.
Each a bottle. We each get
We
one.
would love to do another episode with you live here in our studio if you ever make it out to Toronto, Canada.
Well, you can count on that. My new book's coming out in November 2021. So I'm sure I will be hitting Toronto up and would love to come on your show.
Done. It's already done. Thank you so much for your time today, Heather.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe.
Take care. Bye.